Welcome to AstroTwins Radio, your cosmic GPS for life, love, and everything written in the stars. We're Tali and Ophira Edut, the AstroTwins, here to decode the astrology of the moment and help you navigate your destiny like a pro.
Hey everyone, we're back for the week of May 25th through 31st. Ophi here in New York.
And Tali in Seattle, where I am coming down from the high of a 3-day astrology conference. NORWAC, the Northwest Astrology Conference, takes place over Memorial Day weekend. And usually I'm a little too busy to be there for the whole thing. Usually going to a barbecue or doing family stuff. But this year I was able to attend the entire conference. And oh, what fun it was. Be sharing about some of the great things that I learned there this week, as well as some very global forecasts that are happening.
So, we're coming up on our blue moon in Sagittarius, our second full moon of the month. We had two bookending. We started with the Scorpio full moon on May 1st, and we're ending the Sag full moon. Now, it's really just a calendaring thing, even though it's been ascribed this special power. There's 31 days in May, and the way the full moons fall every 2 weeks just happened to be on the first and the last day of the month. So it's not as magical as we like to think it is, and yet maybe it is too. So
well, they only happen every couple of years, so It is a rare thing. And because we tend to think in cycles anyways as people in our planning, we always look at a month as kind of a capsule collection of its own events. And so to begin and end this very wild month with two full moons, I mean, the news cycle has been nonstop when we were preparing for today's shows. It's like, oh, and this happened, and this happened, and oh my God, and this happened. Like, it's ever since Uranus moved into Gemini on April 25th, it feels like that's only accelerated even more.
Yeah, it's true. And we just decided to give ourselves that longer Memorial Day weekend. We are bringing this to you a couple days later than usual for that very reason. So,
and I had a conference hangover. Let's be honest.
We
started this off. Thursday, one of our dear friends, the astrologer Colin Bedell, who we met when he wasn't even practicing astrology yet, and he's been. He calls us his mentors. We'll take it. He's done a lot of work on his own as well. And he just had his birthday falls during NORWAC, and he gave a couple really great talks this time. He likes to get into kind of the ethics and of practicing astrology in his talks, which I think are incredibly important, him being a millennial. So we had a little birthday party barbecue over here in my backyard for him. So there were
the garden got its first party.
It did. I've got to share some pictures, but it's still, a work in progress, but it felt really good to have, somebody came who had been raised by a landscaper too and worked in horticulture and gave me a high compliment on my selection of plants and the way I layered them to always have something blooming. It's kind of a thing.
Nothing a Capricorn rising would appreciate more than that.
Yeah, it was really, it was kind of the first party I've had here, like of that size since, my ex moved out. So it felt like a housewarming, and my roommate who's a cook, made he made birria tacos, and there was all kinds of chatting about, astro geekery happening. So the house still feels very alive with that energy. Got to meet a couple of our Become Your Own Astrologer students, Adriana and Dina, who have coached in our programs even, and our certified oracles from our second level. So it's just like, really, I'm kind of floating on a high from that. And yesterday, Memorial Day, I was like, damn, you know what? I need the day off. I actually, and I may or may not have, drank some Wild Turkey 101 bourbon with the legendary Steven Forrest. We share a love of bourbon, and he found a higher end Wild Turkey. So we had some
Stephen
fun.
Forrest got her drunk. Let's just
I know.
let's
And he wasn't at all, but I was like, I think I covered her, but I was like, well, I think I better go. And I missed the dress as your rising sign party that happened. And I was just, fell asleep
What's
on
more
Colin's
dressing like your
couch.
Capricorn rising than hanging out with a Capricorn astro icon and drinking top shelf bourbon?
And I got
know.
to hear like great stories. He's 77 years old. He's, well known for being Sting's astrologer, but also one of the, founding fathers of evolutionary astrology, founding parents, him and Liz Green and Jeffrey Wolf, who apparently is the same birthday as us. But evolutionary astrology, there's all these different, types of astrology. If you go to an astrology conference, you'll hear that, oh, I'm a medieval astrologer, I'm a traditional astrologer, meaning that I'm a Hellenistic astrologer, meaning that you really go by a system. And a lot of Gen Z astrologers are into Hellenistic astrology. I'm going to put in my, hopefully not for too much longer. No. But what I don't like about Hellenistic and traditional astrology is, for me personally, is that it's very rule bound. This means this. It's very specific, amazing systems. Like, there's a lot I love, and I learned a lot about it. The firmdaria I learned about, which are these 7-year cycles where there's a planet ruling, but they only go for the first 7 planets. They stop at Saturn, and because that's all that the Greeks knew existed. And evolutionary astrology not only brings in the 3 outermost planets of, Uranus, the higher mind, Neptune, the subconscious, Pluto, the unconscious, the shadow work. And if you talk to, I also got to meet Henry Seltzer, who is the amazing founder of Time Passages. He goes out 3 more. He wrote a book on Eris called The 10th Planet, and Eris, is past Pluto. Eris was named after the goddess of discord and strife, and it's like the female warrior. She was Aries' sister. So, I'm going to start working with Eris more. And then there's what are the other 2 named?
Hamia and Maki books that too. I mean, there's this Oort cloud, and there are exoplanets and asteroids. There are, all kinds of celestial bodies.
The asteroid
Sedna.
During the
Sedna's a big one right now because it's at 0 degrees Gemini for, I think, the next couple of decades, and so is Uranus. So
there was that Uranus Cazimi during the conference, which means Uranus and the sun were conjunct at the same degree, that early degree of Gemini, and Sedna was sitting nearby. So Sedna is also one of the feminine archetypes. Her father threw her overboard as a young woman into the ocean,
cut off her fingers.
Cut off her fingers.
The dolphins and the sea creatures.
That's right. Yeah.
There's a great Heather Ensworth astrologer. She was not at Norwalk, but she's really into Sedna and has some really good YouTubes about it. Now, just to back up, to explain, to close the loop on the Hellenistic astrologers stopping at Saturn. So Uranus was discovered by telescope by William and Caroline Herschel, brother and sister.
1781, yeah.
1781, which also was when human design got another chakra, or when it traces back to the projectors being created, coming into being with the discovery of Uranus. Then in the mid 1800s, Neptune was found, 1930, Pluto. So, it's very much like they stop where a certain classical history, but it's kind of funny because even though it appeals across a large range of identities, it's very Eurocentric and, very much rooted in that kind of Stoic Greek classical tradition that is, I don't know, I think with our sun being in the 11th house, which is very futuristic, to me, it's sort of like insisting on using a rotary phone when, fiber optic technology and cell phones exist.
Tell them how you really feel, Opie. But no, I mean, and that's the thing about well, I love evolutionary astrology in terms of, just the word evolve is important. It's like, your chart is not this fixed, deterministic, thing. It's like, it is the first step in your evolution. You learn your factory settings, and then you can choose.
Free will is incorporated.
I love. I'm going to share a little more about one of the talks Steven Forrest gave. Later, because it's relevant to some of the news that's happening today. But he was talking about Pluto in terms of that evolutionary state. It's like you can no longer, when Pluto is active or wherever it's active, is a place where we have to deal with our shadows. And we either, regress or we do the deep inner work to transform. And so that's kind of, I feel like every planet offers that in the chart. And that is, if I was going to categorize myself, which I don't like to, the Sag is interdisciplinary, in our way of there's great stuff in Hellenistic, great stuff in modern. I feel like, why not learn it all? And just
the profection year is something that I like from Hellenistic astrology.
Me
but
too.
Just again, for our people who are not astro literate,
this is a very geeky start to the podcast. Yes. Don't worry, we're not going to leave
been at
you there.
A conference. I was here in New York. Just the idea of evolutionary astrology that's cool is that it incorporates free will, and the idea is that there are different sort of frequencies of every planet or sign that you can tap into. So maybe, there's all this debate going around about Gemini men recently in the pop kind of culture sphere. It's like, well, yes, an unevolved Gemini man might be a liar, cheater, player, all the things, but the evolved Gemini can use their gifts of language not to manipulate.
Look at Tom Holland.
To transform. Yeah, exactly.
He's a great example of an evoluved Gemini. The way he is with Zendaya is like, we need more men like that.
Exactly. So evolutionary astrology offers human consciousness and the opportunity to express the higher register of any sign. And that's what I love. That's my idealistic Sag. I also wonder, what would you get drunk on with a Hellenistic astrologer? Like
Fernet
or,
Fernet or chartreuse, because it was made by monks, something like that had to have some like legendary thing like that.
It's just, I just don't, we have no Leo in our chart except for what, Aries? No, that's in Virgo.
No, we have, it turns out we have, I think it's either Make or Haumea. We have one of the new, and Sedna and Taurus, 2 degrees Taurus opposite our moon.
Well, those Maybe I
Popping
need to
in the
tune into
asteroid.
those. We have no Taurus, Virgo, Leo.
Well, we have
planets.
one of the Polynesian twin planets is in
Is that what they're called? The
Virgo.
Polynesian
Well, that's what
twins.
they were
Well,
named after, these or
yeah, I'm not
Polynesian
gonna.
sisters. I don't know if
Oh, okay. I love it.
yeah.
See, she's been hanging out with astrologers. You
I
can
really
totally
was
tell,
geeking
which
out.
is really fun and cool. But we don't have any Leo or Taurus or Virgo or any of those kind of like signs that are patient enough to kind of go through all the rules and love sort of the traditions. We don't have a very traditional chart. So, to each their own. That's the beauty. I don't know if I've ever actually been to an astrology conference, but out of this, we did decide we were going to go to one in Chicago called UAC in September. So anyone who's intrigued, it's in Chicago, I think September 3rd through
To
9th.
9th. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're not speaking at it, but we will be there attending. And, Tali's positive experience made me think, maybe I'll try one out and see and get in the flow of it.
Yeah,
Let's
I
see
mean,
what
UAC only
yeah.
happens every 4 years. It's the United Astrology Conference, and usually NORWAC has a lot more people at it. But every 4 years, they say there's like a little more of a low attendance because of UAC happening. People aren't able to always come to both, but yeah, I mean, I got to meet, there was still Helena Woods. You may have seen her on Instagram. She came all the way from Paris for it. And I got to hang out with her and talk about astrocartography. Catherine Urban, who is a traditional astrologer. And, but she gave a great talk about the importance of, and she gave some of the history, and she went way before the Greeks into Islam and India, which I appreciated, because sometimes at the conferences there's like this very Greek, which is Eurocentric and primarily white male dominated focus on
She
astrology.
said it, so I didn't have
I
to.
did, yeah. Well, so Catherine Urban really talked about, we're not gods as astrologers. Like we can, the importance of being, of the, being ethical in the way you do your predictions. Also, I got to meet Jan Spiller's people, Stephanie Shea. That was great. She was Jan's kind of protege, and she's taken, if you have the book Astrology for the Soul, which is all about your north and south nodes through the signs, Stephanie
It's
has
one of
been,
our favorites.
yeah, for the last 4 years, Stephanie's been compiling a new book that's about the nodes through the houses of your chart.
So Jan passed away a few years ago. We were
Yeah.
working with her team in 2022 because our Prime Video reality show that some of you guys watched was called Cosmic Love, and Jan has a book by that name. So I went to try to buy cosmiclove.com and discover that it was owned by them. So I ended up reaching out to her team and we started working on some stuff together. We did a collaborative. There was nothing
That was
actually
wild, yeah.
there was nothing up at the domain. They just had kind of had it parked. So we created something up there together. And through that, I met Stephanie and learned that that Jan had left all of her notes for Stephanie to write this final book that she never got to finish about the nodes through the houses. And I'm so excited that it came out.
It's almost out, not quite.
It's almost out. Yeah, I know it was a lot of work for her to get that written. So she's an Aries, so House Saturn and Aries. Go Stephanie.
Yeah.
Actually, Jan Spiller started communicating from the other side with me the day we signed a little contract around just to keep it nice and clean. Her niece, and she was very loyal, and her team just remained and is keeping her legacy alive at janspiller.com. So we signed a little contract. And funny story, my air conditioning and radio in my car at the time were broken. I had an older BMW, and I had parked on the street in New York and went to a coffee shop half a block away to sign the contract. Then I walked back to my apartment and I saw that the window was down on my car, which I would never leave it down in the middle of New York City. And so I put the key in the lock and so that I could close the window, and the AC and the radio come blasting on. Now they had not worked. And
That
it was
was
the
wild.
hottest summer. It was, yeah, I guess it was 2022. So it's like July or August. It was crazy. So, and then she flickered my lights. So
Yeah, you
I
told me
told,
that. And by the way, my lights
yeah,
flickered
the other
a
day.
number of times right before the astrology barbecue here.
Yeah.
So that
Where
was
Henry Seltzer from Time Passages was a really good friend of Jan's and
yeah, he came to the
co-wrote some
barbecue.
of the reports or published a report. So it was like a full circle. But I remember when I told her team that, they were like, that's Jan. So apparently she loves to make herself known. She was a Leo. So
I'm sure
super.
they'll be at UAC too. Yeah, I hope a lot of you listeners who are thinking about studying astrology or maybe you're already into it, consider coming. I don't know how many tickets are left. I think it's kind of winding down. So but we'll be there milling about Chicago. So if you do come, please introduce yourselves. And we love, I met somebody who I did a reading for in 2016 at the very end of Norwalk, who became an astrologer, and as well as someone you met in Detroit who owned a
Oh,
restaurant
yeah.
at the time and now is organizing Astrofest, in LA astrology
She
conference
was
in June.
inspired to learn astrology because we took pictures and posted about being in our hometown and talked about astrology. So you just never know who will get intrigued. Astrology is a rabbit hole that moves really quickly
It
when
is.
you get into it. So that's super cool. I'm really glad that you got to go there and
I know I'm
meet
like
some of the
gushing
people.
about it, but it's been a long time since I've done, that long, like 3-day live in person thing since the pandemic. So it's really good, even though I did wind up getting a cold afterwards. I'm not sure if it's allergies or a cold, but I've got the sniffles
I
today. So I'm
wouldn't be
going to try and.
surprised because it just
My
there was so much
defenses are
energy that
down.
I felt it on the other side of the country. I felt like this conference had been going on for like a year, like from just like every day. I was like, oh my God, I just hung out with this person, or these people were over. And it was like, oh wow, how cool. Like just to all be in
Well,
one
we
place.
all need to stick together in this world and find our people because things are hectic out there. And this week is no exception to the rule in the stars. It's like it was a nice break to not be scrolling and checking my news feed. So today, at time of recording, which is Tuesday, May 26th, one of the bigger events this week is Mars squaring Pluto. Mars in Taurus squaring Pluto in Aquarius. This is only the second time this has happened in our lifetime in in these signs. First time was in 2024. So Mars is violent. Mars is war. Mars is aggressive. And Pluto is the back alley deals. Pluto is the shady shit happening behind the scenes. A more enlightened view of those two planets. Mars is our drive, our motivation, our momentum, and Pluto is the thing we want to transform. So when planets are meeting in a square, it's not a bad thing, but it's almost like it's a right angle. So imagine two cars driving and coming together in an intersection. They're either going to stop and jump out and say, hey, what's up? Or they're going to crash into each other. But their energies are in this dynamic, like we can't avoid each other. But the way we dance together has to be thought through carefully. So Mars and Taurus is sort of land grab for natural resources. Pluto and Aquarius
Funny.
as well, money. And we've got a couple things that come to mind. The SpaceX IPO being one of those. And Ophi, you just recorded a special additional YouTube this weekend about astrology and the financial forecast cycles, astrology of financial cycles, forecasts for the economy in 2026 and beyond. It was the summit talk that you did, Summit at Sea.
Yeah, Tali had a conference hangover, but I had a
You did your
Uranus
own
and
conference.
Gemini news hangover. I really, I feel like my Instagram has been serving up way too much information in a single reel at once, and I can't stop watching them. So I needed a little brain reset, and to like just go a little deeper. So I've been promising that I would record the talk I gave at Summit at Sea about the astrological cycles, Leo and Aquarius nodal patterns every 18.6 years. So we'll drop the link in the show notes, but it's a special episode just on YouTube. If you're curious about some history, it is there for you. And
you really dug in, and you've been learning a lot about the financial world and astrology. So SpaceX, Elon Musk's company, is having its initial public offering, meaning it's offering, I think, 4% of its stock to the public. And
yeah, people have been asking a lot about when that IPO was going to be, because when a company is formed and when it goes public on an exchange, gives it an astrological chart. So it's slated for June 12th, which will make it a Gemini with a Taurus moon and a Cancer rising.
And it seems like they might have consulted an astrologer for that day. You did a little transit chart, and isn't Jupiter like right on SpaceX?
Right on the ascendant, right in the first house. So it is going to be over promising and potentially under delivering, but it's going to come out with a lot of swagger. There are multiple planets in the 11th house of technology, which would be very lucky for this company. There's Saturn right on the midheaven in the 10th house, though, in Aries. So
I mean, that's a strong place for Saturn.
It's a strong place. I mean, but that also can show a leader with a large ego too. And Elon Musk, who's a Cancer, the ascendant of this company, if it does have its IPO that day, for sure, is going to own like 80% of the company, is going to make the majority of decisions. So this is, you're basically buying into Elon's world,
which is why I won't be. And that's, this is where we find ourselves at this moment in history. Like, people are really excited to own SpaceX and thinking like maybe this is that big deal thing that 50 years from now your children's children will be rich from, and that may or may not be true. But again, this to me speaks to that kind of Mars Pluto square. There's also a square between Venus that rules money and Saturn.
The one thing about the SpaceX chart that's interesting is that it's midheaven, which is kind of your whole trajectory for success, is in Aries. And Aries is the sign that's ruled by Mars. So we know that Elon Musk is obsessed with colonizing Mars and bringing life to Mars. I think he gets a payout if that happens. That's written in. And yeah, so it's got Neptune on one side of the midheaven in the 9th house of expansion and growth, which is an illusion. And people buy the illusion.
Boundless exploration too.
Yeah, boundless exploration in Aries. I mean, the thing is, like,
what is SpaceX's birthday? Because when we say we're looking at SpaceX,
it's a Pisces, actually.
So what we do is we look at the date that the company was founded, and then we run a birth chart, just like so companies have their own birthdays, just so you guys understand what we're talking about when we say that. So I guess
Ascendant,
you were
yeah.
able to get the time of birth to know it's midheaven. Is there
Well, it's when it goes on the exchange. It opens at 9:30. So I
okay.
cast it for that. Typically, astrologers after an IPO, I've learned financial astrologers will mostly start looking at the IPO date as the chart from that day on. But SpaceX was incorporated on Pi Day on March 14th of 2002. And that would make it a Pisces with a 0 degree Aries moon. So it's going from being a Pisces to a Gemini, both dualistic signs. And yeah, interesting that Saturn and Pisces matured the company, and now it's ready for this IPO and this new chart. It is but Jupiter was in Cancer then too.
So
Interestingly,
SpaceX is having its Jupiter return as Jupiter's
24 years old. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, this is where
actually
we have
born in the year of the horse too. So it was a Pisces horse. It'll become a Gemini horse. Interestingly,
Oh,
so
wow. Okay, there you go.
yeah.
I feel like they must have talked to an astrologer, but this is where that Mars Pluto square comes in. And we also have a second square between planets this week. On Thursday, we have Venus in Cancer, which Venus is also associated with money. Cancer is kind of your savings, your nest egg, squaring Saturn, the long-term planner, in speculative Aries. So we have these two squares happening. Mars and Taurus, money as well, sort of this eagerness to make money and, build that security, squaring Pluto, the hidden, in Aquarius, which rules space travel. So great.
And
all sounds good. And
technology.
technology all sounds great. But the thing is, what are you investing in here? Who are you investing in? And we're in such an interesting place. Like there's class A stock, there's class B stock. Class A is what the shareholders get, very limited voting rights. Class B is what Elon and the founders and the insiders have. They have much greater voting power, and he'll have 80% of the vote. So you are investing in Elon Musk. You're investing in somebody who I personally would rather, live on a collective farm than give my money to him. I can't. He's a destructive force. He's insatiable in his greed. He cares about enriching himself.
That Leo South node in his chart. He's going to have his North
He
node
does.
return,
He
which
does.
is Aquarius North node. Yeah.
And what he's done behind the scenes in our government and with Doge, and personally, I think, he had a hand in Trump's win. If you've seen the video going around by his last baby mama, who the former
Ashley St. Clair, who's a Leo, which is his South node. So she is his karmic shadow.
She is spilling all the tea and saying that he basically used his SpaceX satellites to do something nefarious to rig the 2024 election. I mean, I don't find that at all hard to believe. I don't think it's been proven yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is one day. Anyways, that's my opinion on it. You handle your finances as you will, but I feel like there's just so many backdoor deals going on. Like, what on earth is happening in Venezuela right now? Will these things be exposed with the Sagittarius full blue moon? Will these global, because you were looking into that more, Ophi, like what has been going on in Venezuela for the last month?
It's so interesting that, we had Maria Machado's Libra, and sadly lapsed into the people-pleasing shadow, unevolved
the Nobel
side.
Peace Prize winner who gave her prize to to Trump, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
She gave her prize, in exchange got nothing because because Delcy Rodriguez, who uh, was the vice president, is now running the country. She's a May 18th, 1969 Taurus, which makes me know that she just had Uranus over her sun, which is, a sort of a shocking moment. And then she also is just finishing up her North Node return. So it's whether she's good or bad, it's a time to rise into some sort of new prominence, or so she thinks. But what people are saying is that Venezuela is now becoming like a protectorate. And what a protectorate is an autonomously run uh, nation that's controlled by a foreign government. So it looks like it's sovereign, but it's because the US and Washington is making all these regulation or deregulations on environmental and other protections, and calling a lot of the shots. So she's obviously going to allow that, and it's turning into just
Another imperialist move.
Yeah. So nothing that we should be surprised about, but it's very hard to not just feel like, oh my God, this guy gets away with everything. So,
I mean, there's a lot, I looked at Trump's what's called his progressed chart. So, you have your birth chart. That's where all the planets were when you were born. But the way a progressed chart works, this is kind of an evolutionary thing, is each day after you were born counts for a year. So I'm going to be 54 this year. I would go 54 days past December 2nd, 1972. And wherever the planets were, then, you can run it with a progress chart calculator. That is kind of your evolved self. So a couple of years ago, we actually became progressed Aquarius sons. We were 30 years progressed Capricorn sons, while we were from like age 19, to 39 when we were like building, or I'm sorry, 49 when we were really like workaholic building our business. That was handy. Thank you. But now this progressed Aquarius energy, we started podcasting. Like now I want to go to conferences, being more out there. So you have a progressed chart too. It's fascinating. But I took a look at Trump's, and it's really insane. I mean, this guy is, I was like, oh, can I find some, bad news here? But this man is like put on planet Earth to like, I don't know, force us to evolve through our shadow. He might as well be Pluto. He has Neptune, Mars, Chiron, Jupiter, and Venus all in Libra. Translation for that, actually, Jupiter and Venus, which are the traditional astrologers call the benefics. They're like the luckiest, most fortunate planets, are together in Libra in the 12th house of all things hidden. Libra being deals, Putin, Netanyahu are Libras. I mean, he has this whole
Bolsonaro.
cluster of planets in Libra, which is diplomatic and, alluring and charming in this snake oily 12th house. Like this man, and we know this, is enriching himself, and he's just going to get richer and richer
through
and
his
richer.
relationships.
He's
with
already
Libra
doing
rules.
quantum computing, insider trading, telling everyone to invest in quantum computing, essentially, which we've been writing about since our 2023 book about the expansion of quantum computing, which is the fast computers that are needed to run all of the things that we're building. Now, on the analog side of things, maybe semi-analog, Pope Leo is actually meeting with Anthropic CEOs to talk about an ethical future for the use of AI. So we're, again, here we are, Uranus and Gemini for the next 7 years. We're going to see both things happening, the duality, which I like. It's like suddenly, like for every shitty thing that happens, there's like an equally strong, like
Yeah, I love
Mamdani
Pope
just got,
Leo.
yeah.
Yeah, he's a Virgo, and the South Node's in Virgo, so he's been a quiet force. But when it leaves on July 26th, I think we'll see him still being the quiet force while Jupiter is in Leo from June 30th until next summer. But when Jupiter goes into Virgo next summer, Pope,
2027.
yeah,
Yeah.
2027, and we have the solar eclipse. I think Pope Leo's gonna really rise up even more as sort of a voice that we need.
And probably later this year too. One of the great talks that I went to was by the astrologer Sam Reynolds, who I love, and Unlock Astrology. And he's like one of my favorite lecturers, and he did uh, a talk on "Do We Still Have a Dream?" Based on Martin Luther King's speech during the March on Washington, and he pointed out that there was a lot of action going on at 4 degrees Virgo. Then the South Node, the Sun, Uranus were all there during MLK's speech, and in the early 60s. And the eclipse this year on August 28th is going to be at 4 degrees Pisces, and the sun will be at 4 degrees Virgo. So it's hitting that same point. So right before the midterm elections, and while the Voting Rights Act is, getting battled down, we're going to have uh, a hit to that point from an eclipse. So that could be really awakening for people. I did see some more good news today that in Alabama federal court, a panel of judges struck down some far right wing attempts to redraw the map of Alabama, the voting map, and they cited discrimination of Black voters. So we are, it's like, okay, what's it going to
We have
be?
to take every little victory
We
we can
do.
during this Saturn and Aries early years of everything. So, but it catches up. It catches up. So, that's something that studying Kabbalah with David Guillaume, who's an Aquarius. Back in 2011, when I took
Yeah.
my first Kabbalah classes with him, now he's independent, but one of the things that I always remembered from Kabbalah was the trick of time. That one of the illusions, Kabbalah kind of is sort of like evolutionary astrology, in that like everything's a game, and you could be tempted to do things the shady, greedy, quick hit way, or you kind of hold your values and integrity. It's not exactly how it says it, but that's how I
The
took it
lapse is a
away.
little bit of a time. There's like,
Yeah, the
it
idea is that
isn't
there's a time
linear.
lapse. Yeah, time is not linear. So you think, oh, if I just look the other way and invest in this shady Trump stock or whatever, like, well, my kids will be
Well,
okay. But
Elon, SpaceX, believe the
right, all of that.
hype. He's so successful.
And
Well,
then what
why?
happens, yeah, is that like the cause and effect appear. Like, well, I did it and it worked, so I got away with it, so it must be okay. So not to be all,
Well, in the cross of the
superstitious,
sleeping
but yeah.
phoenix era. So we've talked about this a lot. We're leaving the cross of planning February of 2027, 400 plus years in this sort of a human design age, if you will. And we're going into 400 plus years of the cross of the sleeping phoenix. So the ethics, who you align with, the values of the people that you decide to fund or put your energy and time in are really going to matter more and more and more in the coming years. We're kind of in this last gasp of this cycle of industrialization and just build forge ahead. And I don't know, I just feel
I mean, I
like
think it's just, I say that more to comfort people who feel like, oh my God, the bad guys are getting away with everything. And it might look that way, but it just looks that way now. So just sometimes the only thing that comforts me is like thinking about that or the prophecies of Edgar Casey and Nostradamus and looking or the Hopi
Well,
prophecies.
your YouTube, your video that you posted, your talk about astrology of financial cycles really does a great job of laying out the how the nodal cycles of Leo and Aquarius kind of the one that happened 10 years ago was the one that enriches people, and the one that's coming up now with the Northern Aquarius brings more equity and to
Yeah,
the
more of a
people a
correction. Yeah.
correction. And on that, there's a real clear example of that happening now, a little ahead of time. New York Mayor Mamdani just stood up. He's in Libra, just stood up to Capricorn Jeff Bezos. Their sons are square each other, talking about the square. And he's
Mhm.
collecting $9 million in fines that were owed for trucks, Amazon trucks parking and polluting the air there. And he's like, nobody, no company, no matter how big, is above the law here. This coming after Bezos went on TV and just said, you can tax me. It's saying like people shouldn't be taxed who are making $75,000. Like it doesn't matter. But it's like, well, why are they being taxed? Because you don't pay your taxes, dude. I want to read this little quote from a article in USA Today because it was a good one. And I pay billions of dollars in taxes. This is Bezos. If people want me to pay more billions, then let's have that debate. But don't pretend that that's going to solve the problem, Bezos said. You could double the taxes I pay, and it's not going to help that teacher in Queens, I promise you. And then in a
Mm.
post on X, Mamdani responded simply, I know a few teachers in Queens who would beg to differ.
Love
Love it.
him.
I can
I've been
say,
looking at the IPO charts of a lot of these companies, and Amazon just had its birthday. Its IPO was on May 15th, 1997. What a surprise. It's a Taurus with a
mm,
Virgo moon, and I think it
hey,
just had its North Node opposition too. So, you
covering
know,
all the basics. And you also said that the
yeah.
Tax Cuts and Jobs Act from the Leo North Node, like a
Yeah, I
decade
talked
ago,
about that
is
last week.
why that's
Yeah.
why Amazon has been able to get away with all of the.
So Donald Trump, and I talk about this in this YouTube video. So when we have a Leo North node, so every decade there's either a North node in Leo, which is a time of great speculation, or a North node in Aquarius, which is more of a correction or a redistribution time. So during the 2017-2018 North node in Leo, that was when the crypto bubble went, the first initial crypto offerings. And um, that was when so Donald Trump and FDR, the only two presidents ever to govern during both a Leo North Node and an Aquarius North Node cycle. FDR because he served 4 terms, Trump because he skipped a term and came back. So his first term was during a Leo North Node speculative gold rush time. And he really benefited from the halo effect of that timing. But he created something shortly after coming into office. I think it was December of 2017, called the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, where he cut taxes for all these wealthy, basically the 1%. And a lot of them actually even spent money on PR and marketing to suggest it would be good for the everyday worker when it wasn't. But it's what allowed companies like Amazon to not have to pay taxes and enrich themselves. And it's probably why you saw all those people, those oligarchs at the inauguration and flying to China, and he helped them all. So now they owe him. I mean, he's really good at that. So, one company though that is an Aquarius ruled company that I'm in the have my eye on as I'm sort of tracking how this next Aquarius North Node cycle plays out. I think it's really important to look back at history and see what's happening. And then you go, I wonder how it's going to go. Is NVIDIA, which is in the news, they, make the AI chips, and it's an Aquarius corporation with an Aries moon. And the CEO, Jensen Huang, is also an Aquarius with I believe Mercury in Aquarius and a couple other Aquarius. So it's very much going to be the one to watch. And it is, people are starting to, not people, but companies are starting to make competitor chips, and quantum computing could disrupt it. So I think if there's anything to watch over the summer, it would definitely be NVIDIA, based on what's happening with the nodal cycles. The S&P is also an Aquarius ruled. It's Aquarius ruled with an Aquarius moon too. So those two, keep an eye on if you're somebody who's learning or watching and wondering what the astrological outlook of finance is saying. So
well, we have to talk about the military. Yesterday was Memorial Day, and we lost 13 soldiers in Iran, 13 military members of the military, and quite a number of them were women, actually. And interestingly, Trump has not said their names aloud because, who knows why.
And if you are one of our military listeners, because we have many,
we honor you. We thank you. Thank you for your service. So we have news around the military, of course, with this Mars-Pluto square as well. Mars ruling the military and Pluto, being those sinister forces. Unfortunately, it's not great news. Iran is the deal, of course, with Iran has not come to fruition. And now at this time of recording, they're threatening attacks. Trump removed military protection for Taiwan after his trip to China, which is, Xi Jinping, the president of China, has been trying to take over Taiwan, and has already been cracking down on it with military. Taiwan is the only place currently that has the facilities. We wrote about this also back in 2024. One of the things I said, Pluto and Aquarius is going to be a chips war, a tech war, because Taiwan is the only place that has the facilities that are precisely tuned enough to produce these semiconductor chips that we need for cars and all the things to run, and Biden passed the CHIPS Act, but we still haven't got the factories and facilities built yet to be able to produce them here. So, of course, China's been eyeing Taiwan for many reasons, and without U.S. military protection, who knows, if Taiwan will be able to remain sovereign like that. Also, in even weirder news, tech executives were sworn in as military lieutenants. And there's an article about this on NPR that you can read. It's in other news sources. Meta's CTO, Andrew Bosworth, Palantir's chief technology officer, CTO, Sham Sankar, OpenAI's head of product, Kevin Weil, and Thinking Machines Lab advisor Bob McGrew are now lieutenant colonels in the U.S. Army Reserves. That'll go into effect on June 13th. They're part of a military unit called Detachment 201, also known as the Executive Innovation Corps. The U.S. Army says they're swearing in as the start of a bigger mission to inspire more tech pros to serve without leaving their careers, showing the next generation how to make a difference in uniform. So surveillance, drones, they're here. Privacy is continuingly and increasingly hard to come by. And this is I would call this alarming, though not surprising. But we're reporting on the news according to the stars on this podcast, and you
And
know,
it's really interesting that right now there's this AI backlash that's growing because Mars being in Taurus, Taurus is very analog. It is about money, but it's the old school, traditional IRL, five senses world. It's anything but virtual. And it's in that challenging square to Pluto and Aquarius, which is about the future and technology and all of the sinister Pluto energy. So these executives who went and spoke at college graduation and talked about AI in these glowing terms as though they were pitching, some would-be investors instead of speaking to young people entering a job market where they have to think about AI taking the jobs they may never even get a chance to have. Like it was this tone deaf wave of graduations that were, just having this ripple effect, this backlash. There was even news that Uber, for example, I believe, said that they had blown through their entire AI agentic budget for the
right.
tokens and credits that you need to actually run it. It's not like it just runs itself. You have to pay for that. So, the humans that got replaced with AI, which apparently is just a BS excuse anyway for making budget cutbacks. So AI is reaching that maturity stage where the venture capital and investment that allowed it to be affordable and put it out there for mass adoption is running out, and or not, if not running out, it's been spent. So now the real results have to
It's
show.
not infinite, it's like, and that's the thing that we have to say about these Pluto cycles. So Pluto changes signs every 12 to 20 years, and it moved from Capricorn into Aquarius on solidly November 19th of 2024 for 19 years, all the way till January 2044. The last one was when it moved into Capricorn, 2008. And then in 1995, it moved into Sagittarius. So there's these long cycles. And the beginning of these cycles, there's always a lot of chaos, a lot of shell gaming, snake oiling, a lot of opportunity for people to pull the wool over other people's eyes. We saw that with the collapse, all the banking collapse that happened in 2008. Back in 1995, there was, the internet came in and disrupted publishing and globalization.
Globalism, yeah.
Yeah. So, and now it's happening with technology. So these same bad actors who always show up in every generation, they come in one form or another, the opportunistic corporatists. Oh, we can make a lot of money telling people that this is the next greatest thing. And oh God, you got to get on SpaceX. We're going to go to Mars and, you'll be a bazillionaire if you have this stock. Like, maybe you will, but it's like, look at all that 2008 housing market collapse. All these people, they were able to repossess all these homes, fix and flip, and, get this like bargain basement foreclosure. And now no one can buy a home.
Yeah.
Who's a
Because they
millennial.
played around with it, and I talk about that on my YouTube as well, like what happened with the Leo and Aquarius cycles, because a policy put in by FDR during the Aquarius North Node cycle was loosened by Bill Clinton during a speculative Leo North Node cycle, which allowed Lehman Brothers and other places to mess around with the derivatives and the numbers, which caused that collapse. So there's actually an arc, this 18.6 years. It's fascinating when you look at it back through the lens of astrology and history. But to that point, Pluto's move into Capricorn coincided with the last Aquarius North Node cycle, which was in 2008, 2009, late 2007. So, it disrupted the economy, government. But when Pluto leaves, it does, left Sagittarius, which rules international relations and publishing. It left us with the internet, in 2008.
And self-publishing and all sorts of much more affordable ways to communicate and understand each other across the globe.
No more phone cards and pay phones and international rates to Canada and all that. So yeah, I remember, I think Skype was just inching along at the time. And then Pluto and Capricorn left us with the gig economy and, the post-pandemic hybrid workplace and, some problems, but also indelible.
Well, now it's a new gold rush, like things that can't be fully understood yet, like 1995 in Sagittarius, we didn't understand what it would mean to have this new way of publishing and communicating with this internet thing, this email thing, 2008, it's like, oh, wow, what does this mean for housing? What does this mean for banking? And then we got crypto. So like, I feel like there's just that same gold rush of people, like, I'm going to capitalize on uncertainty, the uncertainty of the cycle, and, value things so high so that people get that FOMO and get, and we have to really
and that's happening with SpaceX and then potentially the OpenAI and Anthropic. They haven't announced it, but they're talking about IPOs as well. So we do have Mercury going retrograde.
I mean, I have
June 29th
in Cancer, which rules your nest egg. So think twice about, just think about the energy, the spiritual energy of where you put your money. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here, and
yeah, but in mythology, Pluto kidnapped Persephone and dragged her down to the underworld. And he had to strike a deal with her mother, Demeter, that she would spend 6 months underground with him and in captivity and 6 months above ground with her, which is when, everything came above ground. And she was
Pluto is, and Aquarius kind of represents the outsider, the person on the, and Pluto has almost kidnapped the outsiders and put them in cult-like mentality, whether that's MAGA, or
Turning point.
I'll get biblical for a minute. This quote from Matthew 16:26, for what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? That quote just like
a Jew just quoted the New Testament. So,
I mean,
Pluto's an Aquarius.
It's like, that's like the quote. I did say I was going to share about what Steven Forrest lectured on about the US, and he gave a really amazing talk, which I believe I'll actually share the link to NORWAC, because even if you didn't attend the conference, I think they have a whole library of all the talks and you can watch them. But he did an incredible one. He looked at the USA's chart, the Sibley chart, which is, it picks a time and it does what's called a rectified chart. So it like moves it around. And okay, we've all decided that this is the time. This feels right. This is the time that the U.S. is born. We're going to work with this.
The Declaration of Independence was signed. Nobody really knows. What do they say? Like 5:30 or something like that.
I don't actually remember what it was, but I mean, it doesn't even matter what time. Well, it did for the houses a bit, but one thing he pointed out is that, speaking of those Aquarius Leo nodes, the United States has a 7-degree Aquarius South node, and Pluto is inching towards it. Next year, and early 2028, it's going to be conjunct, but Pluto's made it to 5 degrees, so it's within a few degrees. We're feeling it. So the South node is really the karma that you carry in, that you are releasing in this lifetime and moving towards the North Node, which is the medicine, the healing. So that's Leo for the United States. But in the United States chart, there's a grand trine, which is this triangle. We've talked about it. It would be an equilateral triangle. And it's this free flowing current between three placements on the chart. Some people, interpret that as lucky or good fortune, but that's too simplistic. It just means there's nothing interrupting that current. So there's just energy flowing. So with this chart, the United States has Uranus, the people, in Gemini in the sixth house, which is the house of, the workers, the working class, the laborers. And then Saturn, dominating Saturn, the father, in the 10th house in Libra, which is the elite class. And Stephen is saying that, here comes Pluto pulling that shadow work, like the roots, the deepest roots of the United States is this inequity, this relationship, this trine relationship between those Saturn and Libra elites, the people who came over for the quote unquote new world lived in, Europe, where the eldest son got the land and everyone else was kind of just, spare part hanging out there, but they didn't get to be a lord. But they could come to the United States and, take the land and build, which is what many did. And that was done on the backs of this Uranus and Gemini, which rules trade and merchants, the slave trade, people, prisoners, who came to, be indentured servants. Like the entire country was built on that relationship. And here comes this South Node, Aquarius, which is trine, which is democracy, the supposed fundamental principles. But where are we not really a democracy? This whole illusion that you can just work hard and make it gets blown up because, we see that more and more with the techno-feudalism, with the broligarchs that's happening, just like,
Pluto has definitely been exposing that for sure as it's gotten close to that 7 degrees.
Yeah, the North Node in Leo is kind of medicinal, but it's like, where is the heart? Where is the bounty? Leo can also be like the kings and the ruling class, but it can also be the creative, that there's enough to go around, the magnanimity,
the protector of everyone. I think that's why the United States has been so lucky, because Leo rules gold. In the 1940s, during the Leo North Node cycle, then the gold standard was created at the Bretton Woods International Conference, and the US dollar became the world's stabilizing currency backed by gold. The United States has a Leo North Node in its chart, which is that
gold has definitely
mindset, but also the heart, the protector. So it's really benefited from that. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Pluto directly opposes that and goes over the
that's going to be happening a few times.
Gets revealed, like Steven said. So,
but the opportunity, because he's an evolutionary astrologer, is to can we actually heal this? Can we actually come up with a solution that breaks that whole, relationship? Like if we were actually to draw a chart with that, there would be a kite with the Leo point, the Northern Leo being the point of the kite. So it's kind of like how we can soar high. And when I think about Leo in an evolutionary way, I can think about my roommate Ben, who's like Sun, Venus, Mars, and Leo. He's the most loving person, almost to his own detriment sometimes. But he's like,
he is a
big hugger, like everything gets generous and expanded and creative. And there's
our
like
mom,
this feeling
who's a
of
Leo,
abundance.
is like that too.
Yeah. So it's like that loving energy of Leo, that just says like, okay, like all we are. And that sounds very hippy dippy, but it's like, it's true. Like at the end of the feeling at the end of the Norwalk conference, or after you've had this amazing experience, that kind of high of love and unity and remembrance
Like
of
Dua
that.
Lipa, who is a Leo that
Yeah.
we did a reading for and we work with her book club. I mean, she is really a Leo that walks her talk and brings that warmth and vision and humanitarian sort of protector of art and humanity into her book club and her posts and even in her concerts. So when a Leo is shining in their evolved state, it can really contribute a lot. Now, you mentioned skills with Jeff Bezos. He said something about gaining skills. So
Let's
interesting choice of words. So was he suggesting that, people need to get more skills in order for
Yeah, exactly. Well, why should we when AI is going to do all the jobs for us, right?
right.
Like,
Well, this brings us to the prophecies part of the podcast where we're going to talk about the human design gates of the week. The sun passes through the 64 gates of the I Ching. That's a part of human design. There's 64 of those, 12 zodiac signs. So it goes much more quickly. Spends about 5 days intersecting with one of those. They each line up with a different zodiac sign. So we've been in the gate of the now for the past few days, and that ends on May 27th. But if you've been feeling like everything has had to be really immediate over the weekend and
bourbon.
bourbon, even me recording that extra video, I felt like I was like, now is the time. I've been wanting to do this. Now is it. So, and it was great because it was really like I could get in the zone and be super present, but it was also a lot of like full bodied energy. So these are Gemini gates too. But from May 27th to June 1st, we're switching into gate 16. The sun is going to be warming up the gate of skills. Funny enough, it's called. So, which is about, just doing that actual work, like having the abilities and the knowledge. Now, interestingly, we've talked about this 412-year cycle that's ending February 15th, 2027, the global incarnation cross, when four of the gates have shaped our reality. So since 1615, two of the gates, in there were gate 9, the gate of focus, and gate 16, the gate of skills. So skills has been one of the ruling kind of guiding gates for civilization and humanity since 1615, shortly after the first, let's say, finance bros of the 17th century landed in Jamestown, looking for gold. And that was the beginning of the United States that we know today, the history of it, really. So that is ending. We're going to the Sleeping Phoenix era, 412 years, which is about autonomy and togetherness and kind of that riddle. So skills have been emphasized, prioritized, and one of the main values, but and they probably always will be just for human survival. But I just think it's interesting that Jeff Bezos used that word because, first of all,
He's nothing if not out of touch.
yeah. So we've been in the sun has been in gate 20, the gate of now. So if all weekend or yesterday or even today, if you're listening to this on Tuesday, you felt like this urgency, this need to say or do something right away, not wait, not delay. I felt like that with making my YouTube bonus video about the financial cycles. It's like, it was a very it's kind of an exciting time. And the sun is in these gates for roughly the same dates every year. Um, so it's a time to really get it done, bring it into form. On Wednesday, from May 27th to June 1st until next Monday, the sun is going to move on to the gate of skills, which is which is a great time to just, it's details also. So paying attention to like the small details, how to do things, learning, like taking the little radio apart. I have a picture of that, like tinkering around with the Legos, reading the instruction manual, learning something new. How do you get it done? What does it actually take? Whether you use your own skills or hire someone who does have the skills, um, that's going to be the focus. That's actually one of our main gates, and I love learning new skills all the time.
Yeah, vibe coding, whatever.
All the things, astrology, anything that I can learn. So it's a great week for learners. If you're a learner or a builder type like we are, it's the rest of the week is your time. So that's, and actually it reminds me that on our monthly manifestation meetup, which if you were there with us last week, we have those now every month. Our next one is in June, and we can drop the link. It's a free workshop where we gather and set intentions for the astrological zodiac sign season ahead. One of the things I said I was going to do was work on cluttered areas that my skills don't know. Like, what do you do with papers that you might need but you don't need now, or clothes that you're not going to wear that you don't want to suction into a vacuum bag because they'll all come out wrinkled, or these are things that are beyond my pay grade. So
I'd love a vacuum bag.
Yeah, maybe I'll try them. I have a box of them sitting there. I think the gate of skills for me is going to be about like asking people how they for some new organizational tricks and tips. So let's see what I find. Talia will probably have some garden skill, some new garden skill by next week too.
Actually, everything's all popping up, but my skill is pouring into our 2027 horoscope book, which we are steadily working away on. Yes, we get it started nice and early. And super inspired by all the things that I learned and opened up to. I went to a medical astrology talk by Judith Hill, and she was really funny. I don't know, it's more traditional, so very specific, but I just love learning it all. So will it be applied or not? If it resonates, yes. But my skill is going to be kicking this cold. Sorry for those watching on YouTube. You have to see me blowing and dabbing my nose quite a few times, but you know what? It was worth it for being in a room of people 4 days in a row, and something like that I haven't done since the pandemic. So
yeah, it's nice to have really that stuff weird. Back, so we have some reading spots open this summer. If you'd like to get your chart read, astrostyle.com/readings. If you are curious about the Apollo Neuro that we've talked about the last few times, we still have our special code for $99 off. We'll drop the link for that. A few people have asked about that, and we can play that at the end of this as well. So that is the special device to keep your nervous system calm, stay focused, get better sleep, and help regulate yourself with silent sound wave technology that stimulates your vagus nerve, which is a big thing these days. So
And this week,
Yes,
Venus, the squares of Mars and Pluto, Venus and Saturn are going to churn up a bit, even in our personal lives, a little bit of angst, a little bit of uncertainty. But hang on till Sunday's blue moon in Sagittarius. The truth, those conversations that you've been bottling up or uncertain how to approach. This weekend will be a great window for that. So thanks for hanging out with us. We'll be back next week with more AstroTwins Radio. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to AstroTwins Radio. If today's episode gave you an aha moment, we'd be over the moon if you left us a 5-star review. It helps fellow astrology lovers find us. And make sure to hit subscribe and follow us on iTunes and Spotify so you never miss an episode. Want the full visual experience? You can also watch the video version on our YouTube at AstroTwins-TV. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at AstroTwins and head over to astrostyle.com to read your free daily, weekly, and monthly horoscope that we write for you with love. Until next time, move with intention and let the universe meet you there.